Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us today. We weren't sure if we were going to do a video today going into Labor Day weekend, but something happened this week that is on all of our minds. I know you know what I'm going to talk about. We had another school shooting up in Minneapolis this week, and it's interesting to see behind this tragedy not only the motivations of the shooter, but some of the things that he believed, some of the things he was involved in this tragedy where he specifically targeted people of faith, killing 2 children and wounding 14 or more others, some older folks and some kids in a Catholic church at a Catholic school where he simply shot through the windows, purposely trying to kill people of faith. And I know it breaks our hearts to see this. I wanted to address it, and I wanted to show you something about why this happens, because whenever there's a mass killing or some terrible incident like this, for some reason we want to know, why did this person do this? I guess it gives us we want to try and understand, I guess, how something so terrible could happen. But we've been told thousands of years ago why this would happen. In Jeremiah 17:9, it says the heart is desperately evil. Who can understand it? God knows the heart of man, and the heart of man is not good. And we saw that on display this week. I wanted to read you a couple quotes from here off of my phone from 2 of our founders. And the first being one you know, John Adams, one of the founders in our history, writing to Thomas Jefferson, obviously another key founder in our history. He had a simple statement, writing to Jefferson. He said, "Without religion, this world would be something not to be fit to be mentioned in polite company. I mean hell. It would be hell," John Adams said to Thomas Jefferson, without religion. And I know religion's blamed for a lot of things, but that's not what our founders thought. They understood Jeremiah 17:9 that I mentioned, that man is desperately wicked. The heart is wicked. We can't even understand the motivations of the heart. And the only way to counter that is through God. Because without God, as one author said, without God, all things are possible. Crime is inevitable. Because without God, it's merely personal preference. We can't say that this shooter did anything wrong. He was just following out his own personal preferences. He thought what he was doing was justified and right, or he wouldn't do it. And he had a very strong hatred for President Trump, Elon Musk. He was anti-Semitic, wanted to kill Jews, wanted to kill Christians. We can all say he was mentally ill, and he was also very evil, as we know. But another founder got into this much deeper, as so many of our founders did. They were very intelligent men. But James McHenry, who was a signer of the Constitution, and this is a little complex. You know, so often when I read the founders' materials, they are so intelligent, and they speak than we do today. Much of our discussion, much of our writing is kind of dumbed down from the words they use that we no longer use very often. But James McHenry wrote this: "Public utility pleads most forcibly for the general distribution of the Holy Scriptures. The doctrine they preach, the obligations they impose, the punishment they threaten, the rewards they promise, the stamp and image of divinity they bear, which produces a conviction of their truths, can alone secure to society order and peace, and to our courts of justice and constitutions of government purity, stability, and usefulness. In vain, without the Bible, we increase laws, which is legal laws, and draw entrenchments around our institutions, like churches. Bibles are strong entrenchments where they abound. Men cannot pursue wicked courses and at the same time enjoy quiet conscience." What he's saying there is, without internal restraints, without a belief in God that we will be accountable, then anything is possible. Our laws, our Constitution are useless unless men and appointed upon man once to die, and thereafter the judgment to give an account, as the Bible says. So I want to show you something. I put it in my video this week, my email this week on Wednesday, when I happened to write about the faith of the younger generation being stronger in Gen Z. But I put in there, one of the reasons for this is that they think that a lot of Gen Z people have looked around, they're looking for purpose in their life. And what many are concluding is that without God, there is no purpose. They need something outside of themselves, stronger than society's messages, that they can look to, that they can hold on to. And in that, I put a video in there. And of the 2,500 people who read the email this week, about 50 to 70 people clicked on that link. So I want to show you this link now. This is a video about what happens if there is no God, the logical consequences for humanity if we, the messages our culture tells us, that we are a random act of chance, that evolution brought us here, that there is no God, religion's just something people use as a crutch, it doesn't really exist, that logic and reason can make us good people. And so I want you to watch this very powerful 5-minute video. I'll have a few comments afterwards. There's not much you can say after you see this, because this explains a lot about what happened this week in Minneapolis, where these poor children were injured and some were killed in an act of violent aggression by a man who hated faith, who did not believe in God. In fact, one of the things he wrote on one of the magazines of the rifle he used was, "Where is your God now?" Well, his God was himself, and that led him to do the things he'd done through the indoctrination he received. It's worth noting he was in the transgender lifestyle. There's a lot of mental health problems with that. He was indoctrinated in a liberal ideology, that's clear, to hate certain people. In one of the most liberal cities in America where is preached, where it's run by the far left, and yet they have these crime incidents. And so you'd think if tolerance really was about tolerance, you wouldn't have these issues happening like they do. But tolerance preaches intolerance. Tolerance only applies to a certain viewpoint, and he went after those he thought had a different viewpoint because they had faith in Jesus Christ. And praise the Lord, they did, because some of those kids are in the arms of Jesus today. We should pray for their families and for that community. Nobody deserves this to happen. It needs to stop, but you cannot stop it through adding more laws. It has to be, our nation needs a spiritual revival where people see truth and right and wrong outside of themselves, understand we will give an account for our actions. So take a watch and view this, and I'll come back afterwards.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? In the name of progress, modern man has tried to answer those questions without reference to God. But the answers that came back were not exhilarating, but dark and terrible. You are the accidental byproduct of nature. There is no reason for your existence. All you face is death. Modern man thought that in killing God, he had freed himself from everything that repressed and stifled him. Instead, he discovered that in killing God, he had unwittingly killed himself. For if God does not exist, man's life is ultimately absurd. If God does not exist, then man and the universe are inevitably doomed to death. Like all biological organisms, man must die. His life is but a spark in the infinite darkness, a spark that appears, flickers, and then dies forever. Scientists tell us that the universe is expanding, and as it does so, it grows colder and colder. Eventually, there will be no heat at all. There will be no light. There will be no life. This is not science fiction. If God does not exist, then we are inevitably doomed to extinction. Now, what does all this imply? It means that life itself is absurd. It means that the life we do have is ultimately without meaning, value, or purpose.
Now, the next 5 minutes.
If each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, what ultimate significance can be assigned to his life? His life might be important relative to certain other events, but if all of the events are ultimately meaningless, what can be the ultimate significance of influencing any of them? Mankind is thus no more ultimately significant than a swarm of mosquitoes, for their end is all the same. This is the horror of modern man. Because he ends in nothing, he ultimately is nothing. But it gets even more distressing. For if life ends at the grave, it makes no ultimate difference whether you live as Joseph Stalin or as a Mother Teresa. If your destiny is ultimately unrelated to your behavior, then you may as well just live as you please. Moral values are either just expressions of personal taste or else the byproducts of biological evolution and social conditioning. Who's to say whose values are right and whose are wrong? Now think of what that means. It means that it is impossible to condemn war, oppression, or crime as evil. To kill someone or to love someone is morally equivalent. Our predicament is that it is impossible to live consistently and happily with such a worldview. The atheist philosopher Bertrand Russell held that moral values are simply expressions of personal taste, and yet Russell admitted that he could not live that way. He therefore found his own worldview, and I quote, "incredible. I do not know the solution," he confessed. If death stands with open arms at the end of life's trail, then what is the goal of life? Is there no reason for life? If its destiny is a cold death in the recesses of outer space, then the answer is yes, it is pointless. We need to wake up and understand the gravity of the alternatives before us. If God exists, then there is hope for man. But if God does not exist, then all we are left with is despair. Faced with an atheistic worldview, the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre realized that life is absurd. In his play, No Exit, he tragically portrayed the life of man as hell. The final words of the play might serve as an atheistic mantra. Well, let's get on with it.
Friends, as we look at what happened this week with the shooting in Minneapolis, I think what this video poses is, while people are quick to say we have a mental health crisis in America, I want to consider the question, do we have a mental health crisis in America, or do we have a worldview crisis? Are we seeing mental health problems, or are we seeing the natural outcome of poisonous, failed philosophies that are creating exactly what those philosophies lead to? As this video points out, if there is no God, there is no hope. If there is no hope, there is just personal preference. Do whatever we want to do. Who's to say whether this was right or wrong? This young man who was living out his philosophy ended up in a tragic way killing people, then killing himself because life was hopeless. We can say he had mental health problems, and maybe he did, but you cannot also deny he also had a worldview problem that caused him to do the things he did. His manifesto was very clear that he was living out the logical steps of what he believed. And we can say that's insane. We can say it's absurd. As this video mentions, without God, everything is absurd. And what scares me is not that we have mental health issues, it's that we may even have more than that. We have worldview problems that are fomenting and coming to fruition in too many people acting out a natural, logical conclusion: if there is no God. If there is no God, There is no hope. I can do whatever I want. I can ingest things that tell me everything is bad. Donald Trump is evil. Fill in the blank. Jews are the problem. Whatever this young man believed, Christians are the problem because they oppose. They believe men and women are different, that they're not interchangeable. Whatever this young man believed was a part of his worldview. It may not have been a biological, mental health issue or a drug issue. It could very well be a logical conclusion to the worldview that so many of our kids are being taught in our culture and frankly even in some of our schools. So that should give us pause. We need to step back. We need to pray for our nation. We need to pray for a revival because the policies that AFA stands for, religious freedom, family, those are all good, but they have to come as a conclusion or a consequence of people living out and promoting those values. But promoting those values alone are not enough without the help of the Lord. So I encourage you this weekend, as we give thanks, as we enjoy our holiday, Labor Day, as we take the day off, take time with your family, have those delicate, deep conversations that mean things, and pray for our nation, pray for the families affected in Minneapolis, but pray for the problems of our country and pray for our leaders, pray for our churches and our pastors to preach the word that will change our culture. I'm Micah Clark from the American Family Association of Indiana. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that gave you a lot to think about. And have a wonderful holiday weekend.